Amrita tried every excuse she could think of to keep Gautam from accusing her outright. She claimed that everything she did was because of her pregnancy cravings, that being pregnant somehow gave her feelings and urges to be entertained by other men. To Gautam, her reasoning sounded completely absurd. What made it worse was that Gautam couldn't shake the suspicion that the baby might not even be his. He was out of town so often, and in his absence, Amrita had been entertaining plenty of other young men at home. The doubt gnawed at him, making it hard to believe anything she said. Hello, and welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into another chilling real-life event that happened in this world. This time, our story takes us to Ludhiana, in the state of Punjab, India. This true crime case is sure to stir up some emotions. In a desperate situation, a wife came up with an excuse so absurd, it defies all logic, just to avoid being accused of wrongdoing. But instead of calming things down, her bizarre explanation only added fuel to the fire, escalating the chaos. So, what's the full story behind this case? Let's unpack it and explore every detail. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And hey, if you enjoy this story, share it with your friends too. It helps us out a lot. Now, let's get into it. Our story takes place in Ludhiana, the largest and busiest city in Punjab, India. It's about a woman named Amrita, born in 1991, a graduate of the University of Economics in Ludhiana. Although she came from a modest family, her life was anything but simple. She was pampered yet disciplined, and many people saw her as a classy, sophisticated woman. After finishing college in 2015, Amrita started working as an admin at a cotton company. A year later, she transitioned to a private bank in Ludhiana as admin staff, where she stayed for quite some time. Amrita was known for her outgoing personality and large circle of friends, which included college classmates, fellow bankers, and co-workers from her previous job. She loved socializing and had a knack for being the center of attention, especially among the guys. Parties, nightclubs, drinks, these weren't just weekend activities for Amrita. Weekdays worked just fine too. With her striking beauty and friendly demeanor, it wasn't surprising that many men were drawn to her. Some even confessed their love at first sight. Amrita was approachable, loyal, and down-to-earth, though some men misinterpreted her warmth as romantic interest. However, not everyone was just a friend. Amrita once got close to a man named Arvind, a priority client at her bank. Arvind often took Amrita out for dinner, movies, drinks, and even trips out of town. But there was a catch. Arvind was the type of guy who tested women, probably because of his wealth. He wanted to see if women were genuinely interested in him or just after his money. In 2017, the two started dating, and for a few months, things seemed fine. Arvind frequently offered to transfer money to Amrita for shopping or other expenses, and she gladly accepted. He bought her gifts and treated her to expensive things, which always brought a smile to her face. But then, without warning, Arvind disappeared. He stopped contacting Amrita, blocked her number, and avoided her altogether. When Amrita tried to figure out what went wrong, she learned from her close friend Pallavi that Arvind wanted to end things. According to Pallavi, Arvind felt Amrita was only interested in his money. During their relationship, all their conversations seemed to revolve around shopping, finances, and wedding plans. Big dreams of marrying abroad, a luxurious honeymoon, and a hefty dowry. On top of that, Arvind felt Amrita never showed interest in his personal life, particularly his ailing mother, who was battling diabetes. Arvind had even mentioned that his mother was hospitalized, but Amrita never asked about her or visited. Instead, she would steer the conversation back to their relationship, ignoring his family matters altogether. That was the final straw for Arvind, and he decided to break up. When Pallavi shared all this with Amrita, she was furious. She insisted she wasn't a gold digger. In her defense, she explained that refusing Arvind's money or gifts would have offended him. "I didn't want to seem ungrateful," she argued. As for avoiding the topic of his mother's illness, Amrita claimed she only wanted to lift Arvind's spirits. "I didn't want him to dwell on sad things," she said. I was just trying to keep things light and focus on our future together. But in the end, her intentions didn't align with Irvin's expectations, and their relationship came to an abrupt end. The next day, still fuming, Amrita stormed into Irvin's office to confront him. She was furious about being labeled a gold digger, and was angry at him for ending their relationship so cowardly, through a friend instead of facing her directly. In her frustration, she even threatened to return everything Irvin had ever given her. She argued that she had never actually asked for anything. She had simply accepted his gifts. There are plenty of wealthy men chasing after me and promising money, she told him. So don't act like you're the richest and degrade me like this. Long story short, after the incident, rumors began swirling about Amrita. People gossiped that she was only interested in men for their money. Worse, they pointed out how she had rejected many men in the past, claiming it must have been because they weren't wealthy enough. The whispers started to get under Amrita's skin. To counter the talk, she reached out to some of the guys she had turned down before, trying to reconnect and rebuild those friendships. According to her friend Pallavi, Amrita even went on casual dates with a few of them, just for a drink or a meal, nothing more, as far as Pallavi knew. By the end of 2018, Amrita became close to a man her boss introduced her to, Gautam. He was 4 years older, worked in a plastic processing company, and came from a well-off family. His father, Karthik, owned a successful vehicle accessories business. Though a widower, Mr. Karthik enjoyed a happy life surrounded by his nieces, nephews, and his dependable son, Gautam. Amrita and Gautam hit it off quickly. Gautam was drawn to her down-to-earth personality and the way she engaged him in conversation. By January 2019, just a month after meeting, they were traveling abroad together. Their relationship became official, and by mid-2020, they were planning to get married. Unfortunately, the pandemic delayed their plans. Even though both families had met and approved of their relationship, they decided to wait and comply with government restrictions. Toward the end of 2020, however, Pallavi noticed something that raised eyebrows. Despite being engaged to Gautam, Amrita couldn't resist her party-loving lifestyle. She snuck out to nightclubs in the city a few times, even though restrictions on gatherings were still in place. After months of lockdown, her party spirit was apparently unstoppable. Rumors began circulating that Amrita was still hanging out with other guys, even while preparing for her wedding. The fact that these men knew she was engaged didn't seem to stop them either. When Pallavi confronted her about it, Amrita simply shrugged and said she wanted to enjoy her freedom before marriage. "This is the end of my single life," she explained. "Once I'm married, I won't have the chance to do any of this again." Finally, in February 2021, Amrita and Gautam tied the knot in a small, semi-private ceremony. Only close family and a handful of friends were invited, given the lingering pandemic restrictions. Their happiness was clear, especially Amrita's, as her father-in-law gifted her a new house and car. At 28, she officially became Gautam's wife, while he was 32. After the wedding, Amrita resigned from her job to become a stay-at-home wife. However, she spent much of her time visiting her mother while Gautam traveled frequently to assist with his father's business. Their honeymoon plans were postponed indefinitely due to flight restrictions, but the couple seemed content adjusting to their new life together. In their spacious house, Gautam and Amrita lived with a 40-year-old domestic helper named Kriti. Kriti didn't have much to do around the house, just basic cleaning, since Amrita preferred ordering food online or dining out with her husband rather than cooking at home. By July 2021, Gautam's work had him traveling more frequently, especially to Jalandhar. Amrita felt it was a waste of money to keep Kriti around, arguing that it only added unnecessary expenses. She reasoned that they didn't need someone for cooking, laundry could easily be handled at a laundromat, and for house cleaning, hiring an online cleaning service every few days was more practical. Gautam, however, wanted Kriti to stay. He thought her presence would provide companionship for Amrita and help with household tasks, especially since he was away so often. But Amrita insisted they needed to save money. "Just because we have money doesn't mean we should waste it," she argued. Secretly though, she had been bad-mouthing Kriti, accusing her of being lazy, not cleaning properly, and even sneaking men into her room. Eventually, Gautam agreed, and Kriti was dismissed under the pretense that the house was going to be sold. Kriti was heartbroken. She desperately needed the job. Her husband was still unemployed after the pandemic, and their children needed food on the table. But Amrita brushed her off coldly, saying, "Everyone has their own struggles after the pandemic. Figure it out like everyone else does." Kriti had no choice but to leave. In early August 2021, things took a strange turn. Sanjay, a former driver for Gautam's father, and his wife Shreya, neighbors of the couple, pulled Gautam aside to share some troubling observations. While Gautam was out of town on business, they had noticed Amrita receiving male visitors late at night. If it were during the day, it might not have seemed so odd, but these visitors arrived at midnight and didn't leave until dawn. Gautam confronted Amrita about it, especially after finding a man's wallet on their living room sofa. The wallet didn't have any ID, so Amrita quickly claimed it belonged to her sister, who had stopped by earlier and must have left it behind. Gautam decided not to push the issue, though the situation left him uneasy. But the late-night visits continued, and Gautam eventually asked Amrita outright who these men were. Amrita snapped, angrily insisting it was just her sister, who sometimes came over, accidentally fell asleep, and left early for work. When Gautam mentioned that the neighbors didn't recognize her, Amrita shifted the conversation, bringing up her 3-month pregnancy and suggesting they finally take a honeymoon since it hadn't happened yet. Gautam, still distracted by work, told her they should wait until the end of the year and celebrate New Year's abroad instead. The next day, Amrita stormed over to Sanjay and Shreya's house, furious that they had poisoned her husband's mind. She accused Sanjay of being a busybody and verbally attacked him, calling him weak and pathetic. The confrontation nearly escalated into a physical fight when Shreya defended her husband, refusing to let Amrita insult him. A few nights later, Sanjay's home was attacked. Stones and Molotov cocktails were thrown at the house while the family was fast asleep. The incident left them shaken and feeling unsafe, so they temporarily moved to a nearby relative's house to protect their children. They reported the attack to the police, but no action was taken. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon in mid-August 2021, around 3 p.m., Amrita got the shock of her life. Her husband, Gautam, suddenly walked through the door after being away for 4 days on a business trip to Hoshiarpur. He had told her he'd be gone for a week, so his unexpected return caught her completely off guard, especially because she was sitting in the living room with Mohit, a man she claimed was just a friend. The two were chatting behind a closed door when Gautam arrived. Gautam immediately questioned her. "Why is there a guy in our house? And why did you close the door?" Amrita brushed it off, saying Mohit was just a colleague who had stopped by for a bit and that she closed the door to avoid nosy neighbors. Gautam reluctantly accepted her explanation, and Mohit quickly excused himself and left. What Amrita didn't know was that Gautam had secretly installed small surveillance cameras in the living room and bedroom a few weeks earlier. That night, while Amrita was asleep, Gautam decided to check the footage. What he discovered made his blood boil. Over the past 5 days, his wife had hosted 7 different male visitors, 15 separate visits in total. These men didn't come all at once. They showed up one by one, both during the day and late at night. Mohit, it turned out, had visited 3 times. And the footage revealed far more than casual chats. Gautam saw Amrita hugging, kissing, and even making love to these men. In their bedroom, on the living room sofa, on the kitchen counter, and possibly even in the bathroom, as one clip showed her entering with a man and locking the door behind them. While Gautam was still watching the incriminating footage, Amrita woke up and noticed him staring at his laptop. Curious, she walked over and saw what he was watching. She immediately exploded with anger, accusing him of invading her privacy and setting her up by installing cameras without her knowledge. What followed was a heated argument. Amrita made excuse after excuse, trying to justify her actions. She even claimed that her behavior was driven by her pregnancy cravings, saying that being pregnant had given her strange urges to seek attention and affection from other men. To Gautam, her reasoning was absurd and only deepened his suspicions. He began to doubt if the baby she was carrying was even his, especially given how frequently she entertained other men while he was out of town. The argument quickly escalated into a physical altercation. In a fit of rage, Gautam slammed Amrita's head against the wall. When she collapsed and didn't move, panic set in. Realizing she was unresponsive, Gautam checked for a pulse. She was gone. Shocked and overwhelmed, he didn't know what to do. Acting impulsively, he grabbed a large suitcase and placed Amrita's lifeless body inside. In his desperation, Gautam called Sanjay, their former neighbor, to ask for help. When Sanjay arrived, Gautam confessed everything and begged for assistance in disposing of the body. Sanjay was horrified. He refused to help and spent the next 2 hours trying to talk Gautam out of making things worse. "You can't run from this," Sanjay said. "The truth will come out eventually. You need to turn yourself in." Sanjay's refusal to help left Gautam with no choice but to face the consequences of his actions. The weight of what he had done hung heavy in the air as they sat together in silence, waiting for Gautam to make his next move. In the early hours of a mid-August morning in 2021, Gautam finally surrendered to the authorities, accompanied by Sanjay. The police quickly arrived at Gautam's residence, where they discovered Amrita's lifeless body. The news sent shockwaves through everyone who knew them. Amrita's family was devastated and enraged, accusing Gautam of being a cruel monster for taking his wife's life, especially while she was pregnant. Gautam's father, Karthik, was equally stunned, struggling to comprehend his son's actions. However, the narrative took a shocking turn when Sanjay and Shreya testified about Amrita's infidelity, and the surveillance footage from Gautam's house was presented in court. The footage left everyone in disbelief. Amrita's behavior was far worse than anyone could have imagined. It became clear why she had insisted on firing their housekeeper, Kriti. It was to make room for her secret affairs. Over just a few days, Amrita had hosted multiple men, sometimes 3 in a single day. The graphic nature of the footage sickened those who viewed it. Gautam's lawyer pushed for the court to summon the men captured in the surveillance footage as witnesses. While many of them refused to appear or disappeared altogether, Mohit, who had been caught at Gautam's house, came forward. In court, Mohit admitted he and Amrita had been in a relationship before she married Gautam. According to him, Amrita had promised to leave her husband after the baby was born, transfer a portion of Gautam's money into her own account, and then marry Mohit. Their chat history corroborated his claims. It also came to light that Mohit had been the one who threw stones and Molotov cocktails at Sanjay's house, on Amrita's orders. However, Mohit broke down in tears in court when he learned that Amrita hadn't just promised marriage to him but had made the same vow to several other men. Heartbroken, he confessed he had no idea she was involved with so many people. Amrita's best friend, Pallavi, also took the stand. She testified that Amrita had confided in her about marrying Gautam solely for his wealth. Amrita had told her that securing a house and car from her in-laws was just the beginning. Her next target was Gautam's money and another property. Once she had what she wanted, she planned to file for divorce. Pallavi admitted she had tried to talk Amrita out of her scheme, but Amrita wouldn't listen. She was completely blinded by greed, Pallavi said, adding that Amrita had once remarked, "It's such a waste for someone as beautiful as me to be stuck with a guy as unattractive as Gautam." Gautam, for his part, stood by Sanjay and Shreya's account of events. He explained that their warnings about Amrita's unfaithfulness had prompted him to install the surveillance cameras. He had waited for an opportunity to set them up, finally doing so when Amrita visited her parents for a day. It was those hidden cameras that exposed her double life. In the end, the judge at the Ludhiana High Court found Gautam guilty of murdering his wife, sentencing him to life imprisonment. Mohit, meanwhile, was charged with conspiracy and threats against Sanjay and his family. He received a 6-month prison sentence for his role in the chaos. Amrita's family remained furious, demanding Gautam receive a harsher punishment, life for life. However, despite their anger, they chose not to appeal the verdict, letting the court's decision stand. What lessons can we learn from this story?